Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. We have a whole bunch of live streams happening this week. I believe there are 5, and I'm going to be doing a lot of them over the next few weeks. But don't worry, you can tune in to any shows you've missed. They come out every Tuesday and Thursday at bizbookpubhub.com. Without any further delay, let me introduce this show. Do you ever feel like your writing has to be perfect before you can share it? You're not the only one. Many first time authors get stuck revising the same sentences over and over. But here's the truth: your first draft isn't supposed to be perfect, it's supposed to get your ideas out of your head and onto the page. Writing a book is a journey. It will challenge you, grow your voice, and shape your message. The most important thing you can do is keep going, even when it feels messy. That's how you build something worth refining. You don't have to go it alone if you're feeling stuck. I've gathered a group of experienced professionals at Biz Book Pub Hub who can support you through every stage of the writing process. Visit bizbookpubhub.com to explore free resources and meet hub partners who can help. Now, let's get into today's panel. Our authors are here to share their writing journeys with you. Greg Davis wrote Checkmate: Tips and Lessons to Help You Make the Right Moves to Achieve Happiness, a practical and heartfelt guide that blends life lessons, financial wisdom, and personal stories to help you overcome obstacles, pursue your passions, and make the right moves toward lasting happiness. Joy Rains wrote Meditation Illuminated: Simple Ways to Manage Your Busy Mind, a clear, practical guide that helps busy minds learn to meditate with ease, offering accessible techniques, step-by-step instructions, and timeless wisdom to reduce stress and build a lasting practice. Kim Groshek is the author of 365 Days of Pause and Abundance: Practical Daily Tips and Wisdom, a daily guide that helps entrepreneurs and leaders cultivate intentional moments of stillness to spark clarity, creativity, and sustainable success, one mindful pause at a time. Please join me in welcoming Greg, Joy, and Kim. And I just have to say, this happened entirely by accident. The 3 of you chose this time based on your own availability. But when you look at those 3 books and the guides that you've all created for all of us to be happier and healthier and more mentally astute, it's like so remarkable. I think we're going to dive into really interesting conversations here. So with that, Greg, can you kick us off to share a little bit more about who your book was written for? Who's the intended audience?
Oh, sure, Robbie. Thanks. Thanks for having me on the panel today with these astute other authors. I'm looking forward to discussions today. My book is Checkmate, as Robbie mentioned. It's really a life lessons book. There's like 12 life lessons throughout the book. It's a really easy to read, 150-page book. But I designed that book primarily for, I'd say, the 20 to 40-year-old reader, somebody who's either in the early or to mid stages of their career. There's a lot of life lessons there, both from a career standpoint, family standpoint, personal finances recommendations based on my accounting background of 40 years, and just other tips that I think would help somebody in that 20 to 40-year-old kind of navigate life in a little bit easier fashion, try and prevent doing the things that I did incorrectly. So I kind of use that as a guideline for others to follow.
It's really nice of you to point out where all the obstacles are on the roadway. You're like box ahead, pothole, detour, and it's good. It's very helpful for those of us who've already walked these paths to share a light back to those who are walking behind us. Joy, jump in and share who your intended audience is.
Yeah, and thanks, Robbie. It's great to be here. My intended audience is actually the me at my mid-20s. I was overwhelmed with stress. My body was hanging on to tension, and I only wanted to learn to meditate to reduce stress, but I wasn't sure where to start. So I'm the daughter of an engineer. I wanted to find something with clear, logical, simple steps, and I can be impatient. I wanted a quick read. So that's who my book is intended for: people who want to learn to meditate, who want clear instructions, who don't want to spend a lot of time digging through theory, and also for those who say, hey, I've tried it, but it doesn't work for me. Actually, I can show them how a busy mind can help them meditate and also integrate mindfulness techniques into their lives. I offer about 20 different techniques because not everybody wants to sit and focus on their breath. So my audience is pretty wide. And I've gotten a great response from the book over the years. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that. And Kim, who did you write your book for?
Well, thanks, Robbie, for having me. My book is for high achievers, leaders and change makers seeking personal and professional transformation. And it's 365 days of prompts. So it has a morning prompt, an afternoon prompt, and an evening prompt. And also there is a classroom prompt, because there was a teacher that I was speaking at a large audience, and she asked, do you have any prompts for my classroom that I can actually leave my classroom to pause?
I love that. I love how you also listened to the feedback as you were doing it, so you can create an even better book for the potential readers that you had. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. Who among you, wave your hand if you wrote more than one book? All right, Joy, can you tell us a little bit about your other book? And then Kim.
Yeah, my other book is Ignite Your Sales Power, Mindfulness Skills for Sales Professionals, because I've been a professional salesperson for many, many decades. And mindfulness skills really ignited my sales career.
I love it. And then Kim, I think this is a longer list for you. So give us a general sense of the kinds of books you've been working on.
Yeah, so I've been writing since 2007, and I have 45 books published, plus some academia articles published since 1990. And how I really got into this really was more recently in the pause, PAUSE, was because I've been in industry for over 35 years, and it was an always on environment. And so I wrote a little story about several different stories called Practice the Pause, where I took a whole year off and I actually paused and I journaled. And so those stories are like when I recognized I was at the airport and I was eating someone else's donuts, for instance. And I'm sure you've seen that story. Well, that was my story that went out in the world. And so they're just little teeny stories, and that kind of built into all these other books. And it's really taking what's in my head and giving it as a gift to the world. That's why I do it.
I appreciate it. And also that you're here, because we're going to be leaning into your experience as a longtime author. Greg, this is your first book. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you help me understand, how did you move past that inner voice, when you go to write a book? And even like your second and third book, I think this comes up. Maybe for your 45th, it's a lot quieter. But that first time around, I don't know, like, who am I to write a book is like a very common one. But like, did you have any of that, internal dialogue going on when you were thinking about putting this content out into the world?
Yeah, I definitely did, Robbie. I actually went through a book writing program at Georgetown University, run by Eric Keister, runs a program called Manuscripts. So it's basically a 6-month program. And when I started that program, I really didn't feel I was at all in any shape, way, or form being able to be a true author, because I'm really just a bean counter by nature for 40 years. So the program helped me get past some of that as I started, putting some thoughts down and having some editors look at things. It started to piece together, like could be something here that makes sense. But I really found it to be a struggle for me. I mean, I'm a numbers guy, so putting words together was really a challenge for me.
It is hard to translate like the data-driven mindset that you have into something that can be consumed easily by others who are not having that same data-driven mindset. But I also hear that you got into a writing program. And I want to say, for anyone who's listening and thinking about writing a book, or they're maybe been struggling to write the book, getting into a community of authors and writers is really helpful. That's one of the reasons I host an event every single month for either writers and authors, or for speakers who also want to be writers and authors. So you can start to connect. I think you get ideas from each other, you get introductions to other great resources. So want to encourage folks to go to bizbookpubhub.com to learn more about that. Joy, I have a question for you about how the approach to your book changed from book 1 to book 2. So book 1, you didn't know what you didn't know, right? Like, you didn't know the process of getting a book out into the world, writing, editing, publishing, marketing. And you also didn't know what a book necessarily could do for you. You maybe had some hopes for it, but then reality is like, it happened. So how did you approach book 2 differently? Did anything from book 1 inform you about this process?
Well, yes, it actually did. And thank you for that question, Robbie. You were talking before about writing a sentence over and over and over. And I tend to be a perfectionist. And my book 1, I said, oh, it'll be done in 3 months. I have all this content. Well, it took me a year to get it out. I had 20 different people read my manuscript, people from different industries. And it took a long time. I was very particular about hiring the right cover designer and the interior designer. So for book 2, well, I had done all those things, so the learning curve was less. And I really tapped into my own knowledge of the sales world and how mindfulness can help, and used that as my framework, and trusted what I knew rather than send it out to 20 different people to read. I only sent it out to 7 different people to read. So the process was a lot smoother.
Oh, and this is where I get to share that many, many moons ago, like a decade ago, I was really struggling. I'm not a writer by nature. I like this medium of talking to people much more. And I got the advice from my friend and mentor that I should, start blogging because it was still like a big popular thing. And I wrote a blog post that I then workshopped with, I don't know, maybe a dozen people over many weeks, maybe months. And I finally hit publish on this blog post. And I went to my friend and mentor and said, okay, what do I do now? She said, you write another blog post. I mean, like the amount of anxiety about putting that first one out. And now I'm in the process of finishing up my 4th book. I still don't identify as a strong writer, but I don't think of myself as a writer first, but I'm a good communicator now and I feel more confident writing. But I think that I started to really get serious about this last couple of months. Like you said, I have all the material. I've vetted the content in various ways. And now it's a matter of like pulling it into a manuscript. And I gave myself a very tight time frame because I understand that if I give myself more time, it will take more time, and I don't want to have that happen. Kim, how does writing so many books fit into the business that you have, or businesses that you have, I might say, the work that you do in the world? How do you? Is it that you keep trying to attract different people to you based on these concepts, or you just have like an internal motivation to share a certain knowledge? Does it lead to speaking, coaching, consulting? Like how do you frame this obvious passion you have to communicate through the written word and the work that you do?
So my superpower is a connector, so I have no problems attracting people. That is probably the problem. I have only so much energy, and so I write the books so that people can get the knowledge I can share. There's nothing more satisfying when you're actually interviewed on a show and someone holds up your book saying, I have your book, and everyone, you have to get this book, right? It really is about, I have a global think tank. I have 70 people in it. Again, I don't have a problem attracting people to me, but I just get really exhausted by sharing all this wonderful knowledge that I've gained in my entire lifetime, right? So I do have courses. I have challenges that come off of each of the books. When you talk about the process around the beta readers, I have a whole process where people can read my books to actually give me feedback so that I can write the right content for them. And then they spread the word and they grade me, right? They put the reviews, and the reviews, are to me, and we're never really something. And we talked about this the last time I was on, but I'm seeing some of the value in that. And here is the thing. Training modules come off of my books. I do audio recordings of my books and people can learn through the modules. So everything is all about, Kim is only one person and she has only so much time in a day. And that's why my knowledge goes into these books.
I think that this idea of how to amplify your access to you without exhausting you, I think it's such an interesting balance. And when we're first starting out in business, this is not a problem we ever think we're going to have. Like, I remember the day that I switched the default on my booking link for my calendar from an hour to half an hour, and how relieved I felt that everyone just booked half an hour. And I couldn't believe how long I had allowed people to just book an hour without knowing why they were booking an hour. And then you get busier and busier, and you also learn more, and you're taking ideas. Like, you and I are multi-passion entrepreneurs. I think we take ideas from vast areas of the world and we morph them into something that maybe no one else would think about. And so you want to be able to convey that. So this is I love the idea that you have a resource to point to when someone asks you a question, and then that you're spinning these into course content and accessible asynchronous content after. And I actually created a course for book launch strategies. My new book is Don't Just Hit Publish, Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews and Revenue. And while helping my clients, I built a course. And I then took the transcript and used that to make a manuscript, but I'm actually going to redo all the videos in the course because now the manuscript is just so much more polished and organized than my first attempt. So I feel like these feedback loops can really be helpful. You talked a little bit, Kim, about this last time, I think, too, but when people are reading your books, it's very clear how to find you. Like you've really embedded into each book like bonus content or links or resources. Can you talk a little bit about how far into the book you are before you really understand like how it's all going to tie together? Is this something that happens at the conception, or is it a tack on at the end? Kind of where do you thread that in?
So it's very intentional for me. Everything that I write about is about transforming my own mind and really learning more about things. So I think the last book that I talked about here was Scammed, right? I had to do a root cause analysis around what are the systems so that I could actually build all these different concepts and see what constrains us, right? And what I do is I actually have that beta reader group, and I hear from them what they need. And then I actually intentionally will send them content, and they'll give me feedback on that content. And that will actually be incorporated into the different chapters. Now, I don't do it synchronously. Like you were saying, you went back again, and that's typical. What I do is I hear, and then something will plug into a chapter over here. They don't say this should fit into a chapter. I'm hearing what they need. I give them more things to apply in their lives. It's all practical. And then that practicality can actually be incorporated based on what I'm talking about in the different chapters, or I put it in the appendix. Now, I also do it the other way where I'm out on stage, right? And then I have them scan a QR code to actually sign up for some concept I'm talking about. And then they actually get regular concept practical tips throughout the next several months of what I'm talking about. And they even chapters, right? So it's all kind of it's like a circle. It's happening all the time. I'm getting the feedback from the audience as well as my own experience.
Here's what I love about this and why I'm so glad you came on to talk about this. It's the exact opposite of how most people start writing their first book. Because their first book, it's like, I know something, I have valuable information, and I feel compelled to share it. But there's no pause to vet that with other people. And I think one of the mistakes experts make when they approach this is that they don't realize that in their mind, they have steps 1, 2, and 3. But when they write it out, it's actually steps 1, 4, 7, and 10 because they've just lived it for so long. I mean, the hardest part about writing my books have been that I'm too close to the material. Like I sometimes don't, I'm like either I'm skipping a step ahead or I'm not explaining enough, or I maybe forget to even say, yeah, it could feel a little hard to reach out and talk because I don't feel hard. To me, it doesn't feel hard to reach out and talk to someone anymore. So it's like, having those response reply loops that you're having, whether it's the beta readers or people interacting with you from stage, I think every author and every would-be author benefits from that in the stage of writing. I think a lot of times writers write more in secret. I'm curious about your first book, Kim, and then I'm going to switch gears and go back over to Greg. Did you approach it scientifically and strategically your first book, or was your first book a passion project?
Yeah, so there are two things. First of all, when Greg had mentioned that he's a numbers person, those are the people that come to me where I translate with them. I teach them how to translate to their audience. That's number one. But when I actually did my first book, it was a children's book. And I mean, I've written and published articles, research articles for academia. So that's another language, right? But then I went to the children's book. And what I did was I actually was out running a half marathon in 50 states, right? And I actually was at my 25th state. And it was, this little boy was 8 years old. And I actually had written my first children's book on the plane because it was delayed. And I read it at this place that was an organic restaurant over Lake Champlain. I remember all this with the whole glass window. And the little boy, he said, yes, I'll listen to it. When I read it, I could tell his wheels were spinning and he loved the story. And he even was still there before I said, what'd you think of it? He was still in the story. So I believe that I learned how to write, and I learned that what people want needed to be incorporated in my writing when I did my passion project, my first children's book. So it was a passion project, but I learned how to be an author in a different way. It wasn't that I had to be a best-selling author, although that's a lovely perk. I have many, right? It is that I'm really transforming people's lives through my writing.
I love that you got that experience right off the bat. so that it influenced the rest of your work and you didn't like just create in a vacuum. So Greg, I want to come over to you because I like shifting gears to talk about reviews, and you of the three did the best. And Joy, you're not far behind. I'll come to you in a second about this. So I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about how you approach this. But I think in particular, Greg, being a first-time author, this is a rare thing that you did, because the reason I'm writing the book I'm about to have come out this spring is most people just hit publish and kind of expect that it'll all happen. Like whatever they're hoping for, whatever goals they had, they're like, yes, now the book is live and it's available for sale, and like all the joy will come in the world. It'll, yay, you know. But it's more than that. It takes a lot more effort, and getting even 20 reviews, written reviews, not the ratings. The ratings are the stars that people can leave, whether or not they bought your book, whether or not they've written any text. But to get written reviews takes a tremendous amount of effort. So getting even 20 requires a certain level of intention. Getting over 50 means you had a whole process. And then, of course, there's a question of, like, who did you go to? How did you encourage people to write these reviews? So your review count is 84 total ratings, and 78 of those 84 have written reviews, which is phenomenal. And your most recent one is in February of 25, which is not too long ago when we're recording this, which means you're also continuously getting reviews. So there's a few factors that why this matters. I mean, there's the whole social proof piece that I particularly like, but if you're wanting your book to show up on search results, the quantity of reviews, the quality of the reviews, the recency of those reviews, and then the verified review sort of gets factored in. If people have actually purchased the book through Amazon before leaving the review, that gets factored in as well, and will, you know, push you higher up on the search results. So often we're writing in a very crowded field. There's no new ideas under the sun, nothing new. So how did you approach this? Why was the review step even part of your process? Like, how did you first realize that was important, and then how did you make it happen, Greg?
Yeah, it's a great question, Robbie. I think it was impressed upon me throughout the 6-month book writing process with manuscripts that how important reviews were, and quite honestly, using your contacts where possible. So like I had an original group, I think 125 people that I had on my email list, and I used that list pretty heavily through the early process of the book being published in April of 2023 to get a number of reviews from those folks that I knew pretty well. So that was my first impetus. But then I'm sure, as the other authors have felt, it's harder and harder to get these reviews as you go through. You know, I'm now at roughly the 2-year mark as of next week. And what I found now, that to get reviews, I really have to work hard to even get one at a time. So I've been, quite honestly, sending out a fair number of books to people who I link up through LinkedIn, for example. I'll just send them a book and ask for a review in response. So it's kind of like a gratis type deal. And people are pretty generous about that. I mean, people love getting a free book, first of all. And secondarily, they're willing to write a review for you. And for the most part, my reviews have been extremely positive and very pleased. But it's a challenge. It's I felt 2 years into it, it's like knocking your head up against the wall to get more and more reviews.
Well, what's lovely is I was flipping through your reviews. A lot of them are multiple paragraphs long. I mean, that's just me glancing through the last few. They're not like one or two lines, 3 lines. That's really all that's needed. And it could be, you can write 2 or 3 sentences and write a really helpful review about the book. But the fact that people are feeling moved to write more than that, it says something. Joy, you've got 43 total ratings, and 36 of those have written reviews. Again, hearing what I just said about to even get 20 takes a real thought, and then to get over that. And your most recent one is from August of this year, August of 24, which is, I guess, a few months back. And but it means that you are kind of continuously working on that. Tell us a little bit about how you approached, because your book came out in what year was your book?
2013. Actually.
2013. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I just had no idea how far back. So it's evergreen.
Yes.
And it's still relevant, and maybe more so even, given what we are. that we need to learn how to slow our busy minds. We have more input than ever. That's amazing that a 10-year-old book is still 10-plus-year-old book has still got reviews coming in on a regular basis. So Joy, how did you approach this, and how are you thinking about ongoing getting reviews?
Well, Robbie, thanks for the question, because you're reminding me that I'm not working on it like I was when the book came out. So I need to get back to that. It is evergreen content for sure. So keep in mind, I come from a sales background. And what do people in sales do? They ask. So I just asked and asked and asked, any opportunity I had to ask. I ran into a woman at the diner. We were sitting at the counter. She said, "Oh, I got your book. I loved it." I said, "Hey, would you write a review on Amazon?" So any opportunity I'd ask, but I'd also let them know it helps other readers, because folks like to read reviews before they make a decision. It helps other readers. It'll help me. People like to help other people. And I'd also remind them it doesn't have to be long. It can be a few sentences. It doesn't have to take you a lot of time. So I think it was just that persistence, and also the follow-up. Folks who said, "Oh yeah, I'd be delighted to write a review." And then, life gets busy and they forget. So I'd send them a very kind, gentle nudge, email reminder.
Right. That's right. I call it polite persistence. I feel that when people sign up for my launch teams, they are committing to writing a review and helping me out, right? It's a personal commitment, and yet they're busy because life is like that. And it's not a big priority for them the way it is, like all people taking action is a big priority for me. So it's my job to kind of check in, remind them, make it easy, offer them support, give them writing prompts, give them deadlines, give them extensions of deadline as needed, remind them, support them, let them off the hook if need be when things hit the fan and they need, so it's like regroup. So, because in the end, if they do take the action and follow through on their commitment to write the review, then they're going to feel great and I'm going to feel great. But if it just lingers as this, like, I think I was supposed to do something for Robbie, it actually kind of could have the adverse reaction of people wanting to like avoid you because they feel like they forgot to do something and they didn't follow through. They can't remember the timing or they got busy, etc. Kim, you just had a book come out, a compilation book in January, Revitalized for the Soul. That one has 24 ratings and 24 reviews. And I'm going to call out the percentage on this because to me says that was a very intentional campaign, because it's really easy to get ratings. Like no one has to do anything. They don't even have to buy the book. It's like, yeah, 5 stars. So kind of not helpful and not actually having an impact on the algorithm the way a written review would. And I do know there are some authors out there who have 223 ratings, but when you click through, they have less than 10 written reviews. But in their mind and what they tell other people is they have hundreds of reviews, and that's not the case. So clearly, since Kim and I first started having a conversation, this has become more, and she's got the right community for it. I mean, if you've got people reading your books already and like part of that world, but did you sort of, as you're working on this compilation book, like make that a little more front and center as the execution was happening? Like, hey, everyone, let's work together to get reviews.
Yeah, so that was actually it was an intentional course. So that so they came on board in August, and it was a 6-month course where they could be a part of the compilation book, but they also ended up getting inspired to write 3 or 4 other books. Because I put a method into it. So I was teaching them the method of the thing that you said was really important, because they need to do that. So I asked them to intentionally do that piece, and they each were to bring, have so many reviews, and it worked. And I was on them, just like you said. I was on them, sending a message, reminding them, oh yeah, I have to do that. It's not that they didn't want to; they were very busy. To make sure, oh, my friend is going to, I have to remind them, those kind of things that happened. And obviously this book that we're talking about today, Pause and Abundance, it came out March 15th. I do not have an intentional, but my intentional is through your program to use that. But yes, it was very intentional to teach that method to them so they could decide to apply it or not.
I did actually work with an author who organized a compilation book, and I was really glad she approached me, because a lot of times these compilation books, maybe because there's so much work. I mean, there's a lot of herding cats, right? There's a lot of work behind the scenes to compile and edit and format and get everyone's pages and corrections and everything, that the review process, the launch process kind of gets lost in it. But she said, no, this is something that I really think is going to be important. And so she managed, there was 7 authors. She managed herself and 4 others. She gathered their names for the invite list, and she ran the emails. And 2 of the authors decided to do it on their own, but committed to bringing X number of reviews. And they got 60 plus reviews, which I know it sounds amazing. I mean, they also had 7 authors, right? So like it's a lot of work, but to get those authors to actually do it is what's the work. It's like, clearly, like, if you're at a point in life where you're writing a book or even a chapter in a book, you know people, right? You're not an unknown quantity. People are inviting you to do that or wanting to read your words, but it is an intentional set on this. So I'm excited to see what happens with your newest book here. But also, you could go back, Kim, to your other content, since it's also part of the courses. Maybe you just put a request somewhere in there in that flow. I don't know how how passive effort will work, but it could lead to a few more, because people just don't even realize, they're not thinking about it, except for that very small percentage. I will tell you a funny story. In the process of researching for Don't Just Hit Publish, Launch Your Book, I found that on Target.com and Amazon.com, there are sometimes lengthy written reviews for toilet paper brands, I should say, which is hysterical. Like there are actually more for, I think it's Gentle Charmin versus Strong Charmin. I don't know what that's about, but like people, hundreds of thousands of reviews sometimes. So I don't know who these people are who are just feeling so, this is a thing I have to write about. Most of us do not write reviews, but to Joy's point, most of us read reviews. Like over 90%, according to these studies, we check reviews to sort of make a educated guess as whether this is going to be product or service that's good for us. So I think that's why it's really important. Greg, you have a very analytical mind, it sounds like, and you approach this strategically. You got your reviews in there, Greg. Other than the reviews, was there something else that you felt challenged by? It sounds like you had a great writing community. You had great support. Like what was the support you needed to kind of get through this and get the book out into the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, while I thought the 6 months of writing through the community-based program was very hard for me, just because I'm so analytically minded, I think the bigger challenge I found out is once the book was actually published in April of 2023, to market it was extremely challenging for me. And this is where, folks like you, Robbie, obviously come into play. And I will give the advice now, use somebody like Robbie if you're thinking about being an author, because to do it on your own is really challenging. And I pretty much, we were turned over to a publisher in Washington, D.C., and that publisher was fine, but didn't feel like I got a lot of marketing support. I really felt like I was out in the island, and that was hard for me. Unlike maybe the other ladies here, I'm not a great salesperson. So that was a real challenge for me. But I think that's the advice I would give, is make sure you use somebody who has done this before. Like, Rob, you've done this numerous times for lots of authors. Use somebody who's done this, use that expertise to your benefit.
I always joke about this, that publishers have in their name what they're known for. The thing you have, the expectation you should have if you go to a publisher is they're going to publish your book. Like that's the promise. Some will provide more. Some will also help you with marketing, but a vast majority will help you either through a PR campaign that they ask you to pay for directly through them, or they'll direct you to a PR company. But the launch sequence that I'm talking about, where you're collecting reviews and doing a launch team, that's really author driven, whether it's traditional publisher or self-published or hybrid published or some combination of things. You have to lean into your own network. And I've had authors be pitched through PR companies to be on my old show, which was about networking and leadership, because they had a book about networking, and I'd go to Amazon and they'd have 10 ratings and 7 reviews, or 7 ratings and 4 reviews. And I'm like, wait, you wrote a book about networking? This doesn't seem like credibility right now, that you're just paid all this money to get on my show. Joy, what about for you? Like you wrote this book a while ago, and you have this ongoing marketing you're doing. Like, what's the marketing you're doing these days for the books that you wrote?
Well, what I've been doing for marketing is going on podcasts such as this, and I used to get very involved with Harrow. It's not around anymore. Help a Reporter Out. And I get these great quotes in very well-known publications. And then people from other well-known publications would see it and reach out to me for interviews. So I found that was a great way to get some traction when folks would read about my book in a trusted source. I also will sell the books in bulk if I have a speaking engagement. You know, when I started out, coming from a sales background, I tried to sell the books to different bookstores and spas and things of that nature.
Oh, nice.
And, you know, it was frustrating just to sell a couple at a time. So I figured if I do a speaking engagement, you know, then they can buy a few cartons of book with the presentation.
Bulk orders of books. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up because individual book sales, the only time I really focus on individual book sales is during a soft launch. So we hit publish, and then I don't want anyone other than the launch team to know about it for the first 2 or 3 weeks because I want to use that time, that soft launch time, to get reviews and get sales on the book. So by the time we publicize it in a bigger way, the book's already got traction. It's maybe hit #1. It's got tons of reviews. It's got the sales happening. Because I think it's then easier to get book to speak and bulk orders of books and book clubs and all the other possibilities are there. So I'm glad you brought that up. And Kim, you're very creative. Are there any particular marketing campaigns, tactics, or strategies that you've been able to employ that have moved large numbers of your books, either paid or because you just knew that they were getting to the right audience? Maybe you discounted or even gave them for free.
So I use what Joy had mentioned, where I actually incorporate them into my speaking fee. But the most effective strategy is really leveraging my personal network. And again, the speaking engagements, but more, I actually incorporate them in. I don't say, do you want to buy my books? That's my fee. And so the books come because I want them to be reading my books. I don't want to make it a sale. That's really, I flip it because I'm really more relationship driven. And then I also use my social media presence to foster the community around the books. You know, and I also create music and poetry, right? And people just need to see it. So I put it out there because they don't know if they don't see it. So I'll put pieces and parts out on the social media or email it to friends. All my really close network of 100 people, which is my additional list, my close friends who I've been writing emails for since 2015. I just send a little once a month story. I call it highfalutin mumbo jumbo. And I just put all my thoughts down that I want to share with them on stories or things that I'm learning or my athleticism or whatever I'm doing. And in it, I actually incorporate a poem or a little writing piece so that, hey, and then I'll tell them this book is out now. It had this story in it if you want to read it. So that's the tactic I use. But again, I'm not a salesy person. And I really want people to connect with the material. And that's the strategy that I leverage.
I like the fact that I was curious about how because you have such a quantity of books that are coming out, how you kind of get some buzz around each one. And so part of it is that usually it sounds like you have a core group people who really care about that one book as it's happening, whether they're in a course or they're your beta readers or they're just giving you feedback of some kind. But then you're alerting your larger network because they're tuned in and they're receptive to hearing kind of your updates generally, and they're getting once a month, which is not hard for you to create, but also not a lot for them to listen to, like to look at. They're at least aware that things are happening, and you are very active on social media, so you also have the presence there. I think it is hard. Marketing is like every day that ends in Y. You know, it's always kind of out there. It's remembering to say it. I actually remember one author I work with. She missed the opportunity to tell somebody about her book when it could have been naturally brought up in conversation, and then came to me on a coaching call to tell me how excited she was that people were talking about her topic. And I said, great, you know, did you leave everyone with your book? And she said, oh, the moment sort of passed. And I said, did you do a follow-up message like we talked about? Oh, yes, I wrote a follow-up message. I said, did you mention your book? She said, no. So it's like, you know, like, I don't know, the nerves or angst or just, you know, stuff that's in her head about we're bothering people. But the point here is that if you're at a point where you're writing a book, you have something worth telling people. and people then writing reviews or even just replying back via an email or social post, they're telling you that it was worth reading. And that should then give you the energy to tell more people about it, because why would you deny people access to this information that would be so helpful to them? And so it's not selling in like a, squeeze page, time limited offer kind of way. It is an invitation to participate and engage. And so I think authors having that mindset could be really helpful. And I'd love to hear about any success stories that happened. I'm going to come over to Greg first, but kind of because I'm an author, blank happened. Like, this is the people listening to this who are still in the writing stages of the book can't see around the corner to what could happen once the book exists. And hearing these stories might ignite that little passion in them to help them finish this writing project. So the 3 months doesn't become 33 years, right? They eventually hit publish and then have the opportunity to bring the book out into the world. So Greg, is there something in particular that happened because you are an author?
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. It's a great point. And this is a fun one. I was, after I wrote the book in April of 23, I was then going on to the looking for side gigs, right? I did some speaking engagements, but the fun one was I got contacted through Upwork, which is like a side gig website, to have somebody ask me to write personal finance articles for their blog and their magazine. It's called Physicians on Fire. The concept is for people who retire early. And so I did that for the better part of, I guess 9 months last year in 2024. And that led to some other things on Upwork where I'm now reviewing some other people's accounting books, writing some short articles for some other publications. And all in all, it was like it was like a $12,000 gig last year. So it was a nice little side gig for me, but all because of the book.
And you had that credibility because you had done something that most people talk about doing and very few people actually do, right, which is you did publish a book. And then I think you have the added credibility of having those, dozens, literally dozens and dozens of written reviews to showcase that the book really in your space is notably worth it. That's really great. Coming over to Joy, how would you answer the, because I'm an author, this thing was possible?
Yeah, great question. Right before the pandemic, I was invited to speak at the Inbound 19 conference in Boston, talking about mindfulness for salespeople. Over 26,000 people attended. I wasn't a main stage speaker, but still I was delighted to be offered a slot in one of the breakout rooms. But more important than what it's done for me is the feedback I've gotten on what the book has done for other people. I had a friend say, I gave the book to my sister and she got the clarity to leave an abusive relationship. I've had people contact me and say, I keep your book on my nightstand. It helps me get through the night. So it's that direct feedback from people whose lives were touched, which is the real impetus behind my writing the book.
I was at that event, by the way. I don't know if you saw me amongst the other 26,000 people. I lived in Boston up until the 21, and I attended Inbound several times. It is an enormous space, and they really work hard to create community within it. My favorite is I have pictures from a session that my friend held, networking for people who hate networking. And I use this photo because everyone gets in and sits as far apart as they can from each other, all on the aisle seat. So 7 rows deep, people are sitting on the aisle seat closest to the door, and there's no one next to them. Like 7 rows of people on the aisle, no one talking to each other, right? Because we don't know how to do that. So Kim, I imagine a lot has happened because you're an author. So I'm going to ask you a slightly different question, which is the advice you would give to others to help them move this forward. I mean, clearly you feel this is a worthwhile endeavor. You keep either writing your own books, compiling books, encouraging other people to write books. What is the advice you'd give someone, particularly if they're writing a book to help them grow their business as a speaker, coach, consultant, course creator? Like, how would you guide them?
Well, here's the thing. I actually write because I love to write. So I wouldn't guide people to do it that way. But there is a connection that you want to have if you are writing your books, you want people to read it, right? I mean, I kind of attribute myself, I relate it to Forrest Gump when he went out running and he said, okay, I'm done running now. That's me. I'm writing until I'm done writing. And I think that's the advice I say is if you have a passion to write, then get that pen out and write. Actually, get the pen and paper out and write, because that actually stimulates the creative side of your brain. If you type, it's harder. It's almost like you have to force yourself to do it. Not to say that I don't type, but when you're struggling to get over the hump of saying, I want to go and write a book, I've always wanted to, and then you walk away, don't do it. What you can do is every morning you can get a piece of paper and pen out for 5 minutes and just write anything that comes to your mind. And that exercise, that creative exercise, will inspire you and make you want to write more, because it's a creative process. So I would say yes.
Reminding me of the book Artist's Way by Julie Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, her morning pages. That's a long time ago. That book still really feels quite relevant. Talk about evergreen. I've known quite a few people who have sort of discovered that book way later after the book has been out for years, decades. But the idea of getting up and just free flow, getting ideas out of your head, allowing the pen to do the work. And then sometimes it's quality, interesting tidbits. Sometimes it's just to get the noise out of your head a little bit. But it stops you from thinking about writing as like this, I must be at a certain point. I must be ready. No, it's like you just start writing. I think it was Stephen King who said, I'm ready to write every day at 9 o'clock, like that's when I write. It's not because he's actually ready. It's that it's a discipline that he sits down and he just makes time and space for it. I think that was actually Kim, that I had the hardest part around, is that I'm this extroverted personality. I love being around people. I like to engage to get ideas out of my head. And it was harder to just look at a paper. And I had to learn techniques that tricked myself. Like I posted questions in various forms and then answered them. Like I said, hey, what do you want to know about this or this? And I answer people's questions, or I would create presentations, or I would create a lot of video content, or, just like, or create a really good outline was another lesson I finally learned the hard way. So there's so many things here. So thank you for that, and just encouraging folks to be passionate and put that passion out into the world. And Joy, coming to you, and then Greg will wrap up with you as well. Joy, what's your advice you'd give someone writing a book to help them grow their business?
Well, definitely discipline, as you said. I'm a big fan of AI, not to write the book for you, but if you're stuck on something, to get AI to help you, and then to put things into your own words. It's so important to be authentic to who you are, whether you're using AI or not. I didn't use AI for either of my books. It wasn't available then. But I think it's a great way to help you organize your ideas. But again, be authentic. And finally, Robbie, if you're putting a book out, it's a reflection of who you are. Get those beta readers that I got, that Kim talked about. Make sure the book is accessible to people. Take time to get a proofreader, a good editor, a good interior designer, a cover designer. Again, the book is a reflection of you, so you want to put your best foot forward. And most of all, have fun.
Yeah. I love the idea of getting the right kind of people on a team, including your beta readers. One of the ways I've been able, I didn't have AI for my first 3 books, wasn't available. It came actually out while I was writing book 3, but I was so heads down, I was not going to learn anything. I asked it whether my book was accessible to people who were newer to business. Did I not define terms correctly? Did I assume certain understandings? And even my beta readers may not have caught that, because they're all experienced in business. That's why they're reading the book for me. They're people I know well. So I thought that's a really interesting way to also ask it to be a certain person and who could be a potential reader. Does this make sense for that audience, if that's your intention to have that audience? Or are you addressing their fears? I write in a very plain speak, these are the things you should do. But I wasn't always saying I know sometimes it could be hard to do this because it's no longer hard for me. So having the sort of reminder to soften this or transition this a little better, that was really interesting. It was the first time I actually had almost like a writing buddy to be like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? What am I missing? Or my favorite, I need a source link for this thing I just said that I just know to be true, but I need a data point to like attach hours or something. Greg, coming over to you, I'd love to hear as we wrap up, what's your best advice for authors who are writing a book to grow their business?
Yeah, first of all, I would say if you're thinking about writing a book, do it. I know it's in the back of our minds for many years, but it took me 62 years to get to that point of writing a book. But it's in my opinion, one of the greatest accomplishments I have in my life. So I'm very proud of that. I think Joy said it earlier. The best thing that can happen to you as an author is to have one of your readers, or in my case, fortunately, a number of readers, reach out to me and say what an impact my book has made to their lives. And that's something I never thought I would be able to do as an author. So my other advice is, if you're going to push the book and do a proper marketing program, plan it accordingly. I kind of didn't really plan that well, and thus my results are a little bit staggered. But use somebody who's an expert in the field, and I'm not doing this just because he's here, but I would use Robbie. I've worked with Robbie in a couple of things, and I've seen his impact. He has incredible reach out there for somebody that's new to the author gig. And so use an expert, because quite honestly, as a first-time author, we are not experts by any stretch of imagination, but enjoy the process.
I appreciate that. Greg, how can people find you and follow your work?
Yeah, I do have a website out there, and I'll give you that. It's we can also post it, obviously. It's www.davischeckmate.com.
davischeckmate.com. I'm also going to put your LinkedIn, Instagram, and your book, of course. And all these links that are about to be mentioned will be available at bizbookpubhub.com. Joy, how about you? How can people find you and follow your work?
Yeah, my website is joyrains.com. No E in Rains, Rains. And you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. And Kim, how can people find you and follow your work?
You can follow me on find me on Kim Groshek, KimGroshek.com. You can also find me on Amazon and some other retailers. You can also see me on LinkedIn, and you'll see me on stage. You'll see me out and about.
I love it. So all these links are going to be at bizbookpubhub.com, which is also where you'll find a community of writers and authors that meet every month, and our experts, our hub partners who can help writers and authors move through their author journey from writing, editing, publishing, and marketing. And 3 times a year, I organize a Kindle cross-promotion campaign where authors come together to lower our Kindle book price to 99 cents and cross-promote. We are accepting authors 3 times a year for that program, so come and check that out. All of it is available at bizbookpubhub.com. Panel, thank you again so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you.
Thank you.